from Maxwell's House of Music in Jeffersonville, Indiana. I'm going to talk to you today about something pretty cool. It's a brand of guitars called vintage. Now, everyone loves vintage guitars. If you're a guitar player, there's something magic about a guitar from the 50s or 60s or 70s or whatever. I'm kind of vintage myself at my age right now, but there's also a cool guitar company called Vintage, and it's kind of run by a guy named Trev Wilkinson. And Trevor Wilkinson is sort of a legend in hardware. And if you're a top shelf pro rock star guitar player in England, you take most of your guitars to Trev's shop and he puts all new hardware, all new pickups, everything on there. He does refinishing work and he does all that stuff. He also owns Fret King guitars, which is pretty awesome, kind of a forward-thinking company. He does all this custom work for people, and he's done all this work on vintage guitars. And one day one of his friends said, hey, it's 1995. Why don't you start a company that makes this kind of a guitar? You do all this work for people and it still says the name on the company on the headstock. You should do this yourself. And he was like, that's a pretty good idea. And so that's what he did. So a vintage guitar is a guitar that has history somewhere else, from the 60s or 70s, or maybe perhaps a player plays one that's recognized. Like if you're Slash, this is the Appetite for Destruction guitar that Kit Daring actually made. It said Gibson on it, but it wasn't even a real Gibson. And this is a sort of a clone of that guitar. And by clone, I mean it's going to have pretty much the dead-on neck spec. The pickups, which Wilkinson winds themselves, are going to be associated also with the model. So some of them have very high output and some have very low output. It just sort of depends on what it is. Now, we got a bunch of these in last week and we've sold a bunch already. Again, we sell them really fast. They're incredibly well priced. For what you're getting, it just sort of eats everyone else alive. They do really, really great work. And just some of the things they do, just so you can see, is like beautiful 5A flame top on this. They also do kind of the more classic stuff. If you're a fan of the gold top era, early 60s, late 50s, this is going to give you a tailpiece and a bridge, P90s, and the thing is phenomenal. They make a lot of shapes and a lot of models, and because of that, they can appeal to a lot of players. If you haven't played one yet, and you're a fan of that sort of vintage Fender or Gibson vibe, you really ought to come in and check them out. They are so cool. They play so well. Every one of them sounds and feels different, which I love. And they're the best price guitars out there. So come look at a vintage.